Okay, Jess, now that we have gone over informed consent and you don't have any questions, tell me a little bit about what brings you in today.
I was just feeling really, really overwhelmed and felt like I couldn't process my feelings on my own, and so I thought maybe I'd reach out for some help.
So you've been feeling overwhelmed and you've tried to process on your own, but you're having difficult doing that.
Yeah, I've just been feeling overwhelmed in life as far as like parenting, wifing, professionally, just a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of responsibilities between, being a parent and mom and being a wife and just professionally. So tell me about some of the responsibilities that are making you feel overwhelmed.
As far as the kids go, just running them every which way. They've been really sick lately, so trying to keep them caught up at school and schoolwork, and taking them to the doctors and figuring out just everywhere we need to be. And it's one of those moments where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
overwhelming.
Yeah, I can imagine. So they've been sick quite a bit and you've been running them around to doctor's appointments.
Yeah.
Tell me about kind of the stress that causes you.
It just makes me feel overwhelmed because there's a healthy kid and then a sick kid, and then that kid gets healthy and then that kid gets sick, and just trying to make sure that I'm staying on top of their health. Like I said, doctor's appointments, and making sure that like I'm doing everything that I can, and realizing like I don't have control over their health, and that kind of bothers me. So it just adds extra stress as far as like their commitments to sports and school and them falling behind and making sure that they're not, and it's just yeah.
That's a lot. When it sounds like you guys are busy just with normal activities of sports and school, and then you add sickness on top of that, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
Tell me what a typical when one of your kiddos are sick, what a typical day looks like.
When they're homesick?
Yeah.
Just trying to make sure that they stay hydrated, staying on top of their fevers, knowing if or when I need to call the doctor, feeding them, making sure that they, have good nutritious food, and then trying to make sure that I get their homework from the school, contacting coaches to let them know that, hey, we're missing again, and just trying to like comfort all of their needs and be there for them as much as possible.
Yeah, that sounds like just a lot of responsibility that you're juggling, making contact with their coaches and teachers and making doctor's appointments. That is a lot of responsibility that falls on your plate.
Right.
Am I getting that right?
Yeah, a lot. And then trying to also focus still on being a wife and focus on the other child who is healthy at that moment, and trying to still give them my attention that they deserve and need. But that's hard whenever your sole focus is on the sick kid of the week. So
I think that would be hard when you have 2 kids. Is that right? And you are when one of them's sick, they require a lot of maybe extra attention, but then you still have a healthy kid that life goes on, and you have to get them to their practices and their games. And so it does sound like you are juggling quite a bit right now. And what you mentioned earlier, that is maybe contributing to just a sense of feeling overwhelmed.
Very much so.
Talk a little bit more about that. With that, like kind of how you feel when you're feeling overwhelmed. Like, I don't know if you pay attention to what your body does, but talk a little bit more about that.
I just noticed that I tense up, and so then like all of my muscles, when I finally do relax at night, sleeping is affected. I'm just jittery and anxious all day. I can be in a bad mood and become really short-tempered, with my spouse and then my other child. And then at work, I deal with children at work, so then it's like I try to rein in those emotions so that I can still treat the other kids, fairly and with empathy, and do my job there, and it's just my whole body is just, and mind, it's tense, I would say, overall.
Yeah. So tell me if I'm getting this right. When you feel overwhelmed, your body is having a physical reaction. Your muscles are kind of tightening up, and at the same time, you have other responsibilities. You're taking care of kids at school. Remind me, you are a
school nurse.
A school nurse. Okay, so you're seeing kids come down to the nurse's office, and it almost seems to me like you have to kind of compartmentalize and those feelings of anxiety and overwhelm that you're feeling as a result of, just your at-home responsibilities, kids being sick. You're having to kind of put those off to the side so that you can focus on, taking care of the kids at school.
Right, exactly.
And then when you get home after a day like that, tell me a little bit about, how you feel after you've been a nurse at school.
You would think I would relax, but it's almost even more overwhelming to go home and then face those responsibilities because my husband works a weird schedule, so I still feel like then that's all on me to come up with dinner plans, help with all of the homework, run them every which way if they're not sick to sports practices, and trying to then clean up the house after dinner and get them ready for bed. And it's like a non-stop feeling recently where it's just overwhelming everything.
Yeah, and I think that would be completely normal with, again, just you having shared all of your responsibilities with your kids, and then your husband who has kind of a wonky, atypical work schedule,
right,
isn't necessarily around when you get home to be helpful. And then you're thinking about, the next day and doctor's appointments and sports games. And so I think it's completely normal that you're feeling this sense of overwhelm. And like you mentioned earlier, that has, resulted in some physical manifestations, feeling, really tense. And again, I think that's really normal.
Okay, good.
So I wonder if you could tell me about maybe what it would look like if you didn't have, like, what would I wonder if you could tell me about what a typical day would look like if you didn't have any of these extra responsibilities and kind of feeling of overwhelm. What would that look like for you?
Just, getting the kids ready for school in the morning, working, and if I didn't have the added responsibilities, my job was already somewhat stressful at times. So that's, I'm able to handle that just because it is a normal day at work, and then going home and taking care of dinner and sports practices and things like that. Like, that would not be as overwhelming if I didn't have such sick kids all the time, just because it would be a normal planned day versus throwing a wrench into it with, kids sick and doctors and canceling sports practices, and then feeling guilty that my kids aren't contributing to their teams and schoolwork. But yeah, a normal day would just be very routine.
Yeah. So what I hear you say is kind of the difference between a day where you're feeling, overwhelmed, you mentioned anxious, versus a day where an ideal day for you. There's kind of two things that I'm hearing you say that would be different. One, that sick factor, the fact that your kids are sick, it sounds like is contributing to a lot of anxiety and stress. And because of that, you're not able to stick to kind of a normal routine because you have doctor's appointments that you wouldn't typically have. And I'm assuming here, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming, you have to think about what medicine they need to take and when. And so there's extra responsibilities when the kids aren't healthy and when they're sick. And so again, it sounds to me like that that when your kids are sick, it's really contributing to kind of throwing your routine off.
Yeah.
That
sounds right. Yeah.
Does that feel right now? Okay. All right. Well, we'll pause here for the sake of but thank you. I know I asked some questions, so I just have to ask you a couple of questions about, again, like I did last time, like, did you feel comfortable?
Of course, yeah.
I know that unfortunately just there are dogs barking in the background, so that was a little distracting, so thank you for just being flexible.
With a hot mess life usually anyways, like distractions don't.
Yeah, we're used
we're
to like
good at tuning things out.
Yes, exactly. So my goal today was not to ask questions, which I know I did, but I at least one. But I was really kind of practicing what are called non-directive listening skills. So summarizing what you said, paraphrasing, so like repeating back to you what you told me, feeling reflection. And so if you were telling me, I feel anxious, then one of like a technique is to repeat back to you how you're feeling, just to clarify that I'm understanding you correctly. And so again, that's a technique, but sometimes it can feel like almost like robotic or like parroting. So like you may say, I feel anxious, and then I'm like, you feel anxious, so right. I'm just wondering if you picked up on any of that. Was it too much, or
No, I think it did a good job at me saying what I say, because sometimes I don't always think or like logically listen to myself while I'm speaking. So it did help to have you repeat it back, because then it made it be like, okay, yes, that is how I'm feeling. So
okay. Well, as I know you had agreed to kind of like work through all of the sessions for this class, but if you do notice, that I'm like, okay, this is sounding like robotic, or she's just telling me what I already know, then definitely give me that feedback, because I guess in my mind I knew what I was doing, but I wanted to make sure that it didn't seem, disingenuous or inauthentic. So if you didn't pick up on that, I guess that's good.
Yeah.
Any other general kind of comments or feedback?
No, I think you do a very good job at staying engaged, eye contact, and like you said, that feedback or that technique. I feel like that really does help kind of break down if there is any discomfort in the beginning, maybe, which I didn't have, but overall,
yeah,
I feel like that would be a good way to kind of break down walls and barriers.
Yeah, because obviously I know you, but most of my clients I won't, know. So that is like a way to just make them feel
safe.
Yeah, exactly. So I think in future sessions, then we will get to techniques around action. So what we're learning now is about directive listening. So where I would be a little bit more intentional with kind of guiding our conversation. And depending on, there's different theories in terms of how therapists or counselors treat their patients. Mm-hmm. And so I would, based on, and I still am figuring out, it's an ongoing process to figure out what technique and what theory I align most with. But all that to say, there's kind of a framework with how to move forward. And if for example, if I'm solution focused, then we would work towards, how we could resolve some of your feeling of overwhelm. But that's for a future, recording. So that was really good. Thank you again for today, and we'll be done. Okay, thanks.